The moment I walked into my daughter's wedding, I was shoved into the back, out of sight, like a forgotten relic of the past. No seat at the table. No thank you. Just a lonely folding chair next to the kitchen, as I watched my own flesh and blood marry the man she chose over me, without even a glance in my direction. And that's when it hit me. I had given her everything, my time, my love, my life. I had made her dreams come true, and she couldn't even find room for me at her wedding. So I did something she never saw coming. I took control. I bought the venue. I paid for every inch of it, every flower, every chair, every single detail. And when the music stopped, and everyone wondered why, I didn't regret a single thing. Because for the first time in my life, I was finally choosing me. Hi, I'm Helen, and this is my story. I never thought I'd be one of those mothers, the kind whose children grew up, moved on, and left them behind like a worn-out coat. But somewhere along the way, that's exactly what happened. I thought I had given everything to raise Rachel. My world was her. Every decision I made, every moment I spent, revolved around her. I put my career on hold when she was born, sacrificed vacations, put my own needs last. I thought it was all part of being a mother. But now, at 53, I sat in the sterile, white-walled conference room of a wedding venue, staring at the fine print on a contract I could barely focus on. It was all too much, too expensive, too extravagant, too Rachel. "Mum, can you just..." Her voice was sharp, cutting through my thoughts like a knife. Rachel sat across from me, her arms crossed, her gaze cold. "You don't need to worry about the wedding. We've got it handled." I wanted to speak, to tell her how much I cared about this day, how much I wanted to be involved, but the words felt heavy in my chest. Instead, I bit my lip and nodded. It wasn't the first time I'd been brushed aside, but this time, something in me shifted. A flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anger, hurt, maybe both. I had spent weeks, months really, helping her plan this wedding, everything she asked for, nothing too much, nothing too little. I could see her vision, even if it wasn't mine. After all, it wasn't my wedding, it was hers. Or so I thought. But when she said those words, "I don't think you should have a voice in this," it hit me. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about everything. All those years of sacrifice, of quietly fading into the background of her life while she ran forward. It was as if my entire existence had been reduced to a checkbook, a means to an end. "We've got it handled," she said, as if I was no longer necessary. Something in me broke that day. I had spent my whole life giving, bending, adjusting myself to fit into the corners of everyone else's life. And this was the final straw. I walked out of that meeting with a cool detachment, the taste of her words still bitter on my tongue. It wasn't about the wedding anymore. It was about me. And for once, I was going to stop fading away. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I had no plan, no real direction. But one thing was clear. I was done being invisible. I went home that evening to my quiet house, Rachel's childhood photos still hanging on the walls. They felt like a mockery now, reminders of a time when I mattered. I pulled out my phone and dialed the venue's number. I had no idea what I was going to say, but something was rising inside me. Something I hadn't felt in years. The voice on the other end was chipper, professional. "Hello, this is event planning at the Lakeside Manor. How can I help you today?" I didn't hesitate. "I'd like to book your venue for a wedding. Mine." There was a pause, then a nervous chuckle. "Excuse me, ma'am?" "My daughter's wedding," I corrected, though I wasn't entirely sure it was my daughter's wedding anymore. "But I'll be the one paying. All of it." I could feel the blood rushing to my head, a hot pressure building behind my eyes. The words had come out of my mouth before I had time to think. But there was no turning back now. I'll take the venue for the whole weekend. No corners cut. Whatever she wants, I'll take care of it. If she thinks I shouldn't have a voice, then fine. I'll make sure my name is on every inch of it. I'll be the one who makes this day happen. The woman on the other end was silent, possibly taken aback. But I wasn't done. I'll also need flowers, the band, the cake, the catering, everything you have on offer. I want it all. I felt alive in that moment. Not the kind of alive you feel when you're excited or happy. It was a sharp, biting kind of alive. The kind that comes from reclaiming something you've lost, but finally remember how to grab hold of. Well, okay, ma'am. I'll send you all the details. I just need your full name and credit card information to secure the booking. As I gave her the information, the adrenaline kept rising. When I hung up, I sat back and let the silence settle around me. There was no immediate joy, no rush of victory. Just a quiet realization that I had done something I never thought I would. For the first time in years, I felt like I had made a choice for myself. And that was only the beginning. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, emails, and decision-making. I watched Rachel's wedding plans shift into something so different, so far removed from what I had imagined for her, for us. But what hurt the most was the silence. No one asked me about my decision. No one questioned it. I knew Rachel wasn't going to be thrilled, but her lack of response felt like a final, silent dismissal. I was at the kitchen counter one evening, holding a mug of tea and staring out the window when my phone buzzed. It was Rachel. "Mum, I don't understand what you're doing. Why would you book the venue? This was supposed to be my day, my vision. You're crossing boundaries here." I stared at the message. The words burned. She didn't get it. She didn't see what she had done to me. This wasn't about the wedding anymore. It was about a lifetime of feeling like I didn't matter, like I was just there to serve her needs and expectations, without a thought for my own. I set the phone down slowly, my fingers still tingling from the message. A sharp ache started in my chest, like someone was squeezing my heart, but it wasn't as heavy as it used to be. It was different now, clearer. I wasn't doing this to hurt her. I wasn't even doing it to get back at her. I was doing it because I had spent far too long being nothing but a shadow in her life. I picked up the phone again and typed back. "Rachel, I know you're upset, but I'm doing this. I'm doing this for me. You don't have to agree with it, but I've made my decision. And whether you like it or not, this wedding is happening because I'm the one making it happen." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The next few moments felt like an eternity, waiting for her reply. When it finally came, the response was sharp, clipped. "Fine. If you want to throw money at this, go ahead. But don't expect me to appreciate it. This wedding is about me and my future, not your need for control." I threw the phone down on the table, my hands shaking. It was done. There was no going back. I had crossed a line, and so had she. The woman I raised, the girl I had held through so many sleepless nights, had turned into someone who could push me aside so easily, and I was done being the one who was always there to pick up the pieces. But in that moment, something else happened, something I didn't expect. A small, flickering spark of power ignited deep inside me. I had been fighting for this moment for years, for a voice, for respect, for control over my own life. So I leaned into it. I met with the event planner the next day, went over the details with a sharp focus, and approved every design choice. The floral arrangements, elegant, expensive, extravagant. The seating plan, an absolute spectacle. The catering, the dress, the cake, the music, all of it. I wanted Rachel to walk into that venue and see everything I had put together, everything I had created. It was going to be perfect. I had started this as a response to Rachel's dismissal, but as the days went on, it became something more. It became a statement. I wasn't just throwing money at something. I was reclaiming my power. I was letting her see who had made this day possible. She could have her vision, her choices, but she would never forget who had made the wedding happen. Rachel had become so focused on what she wanted, she had forgotten the woman who had been there for her every step of the way. And now, she was going to have to reckon with it. She could call me controlling, dramatic, or petty. But I was done trying to be the background character in her story. The day before the wedding arrived faster than I anticipated. The venue was set up, the flowers arranged, and the staff ready to work. I stepped inside that massive hall, my heels clicking against the marble floors. It was grand. It was everything Rachel had dreamed of, and then some. But as I stood there, taking it all in, I realized something. This wasn't about Rachel, not anymore. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let her or anyone else steal it from me. The morning of the wedding arrived, and the air in the house felt thick with anticipation. The silence between Rachel and me had stretched for days, almost unbearable. She hadn't called. She hadn't reached out. And as I got dressed in my simple navy blue dress, a far cry from the elaborate gown I'd imagined for myself in the past, I realized that something inside me had shifted completely. There was no sorrow left, no hurt, just a cold, controlled clarity. The phone buzzed again. It was Rachel. I took a deep breath before unlocking the screen. "Mom, where are you? Everyone's here and I can't find you. You need to be at the venue now." It felt like a command, like she was demanding my presence, as if the wedding was still her show and I was the supporting actress. I stared at the screen, my heart thumping in my chest. The temptation to snap back, to remind her of everything that had happened, surged within me. But I didn't. I didn't need to. The power was mine now, and I wasn't going to waste it on a futile argument. I typed out a simple response. "I'm on my way. Don't worry." I didn't tell her I was already at the venue. I didn't tell her that I had already arrived in the early hours of the morning, watching the place transform. The florists, the caterers, the staff setting up. Everything was falling into place. This was my gift, my silent contribution. She might think it was all her doing, but I knew the truth. I stepped into the car, the engine humming to life as I drove to the venue. The familiar streets blurred past, my mind quiet and clear. The only sound was the steady rhythm of my breath, the smooth hum of the car's engine, and the occasional whisper of wind brushing against the window. When I arrived, I stepped out of the car, taking a deep breath as I looked up at the grand entrance to the venue. It was everything Rachel wanted, and yet, in some small way, it was also everything I needed. As I walked toward the entrance, my heels clicking against the stone pathway, I felt a strange sense of calm. There was no fear, no doubt, only the quiet strength that had built up inside me over the last few days. The staff greeted me with warm smiles, but I barely noticed. My mind was on other things, things that were more important now. I entered the venue, greeted by the soft scent of roses, lilies, and something else. The hum of the band setting up in the corner, the clink of glasses being arranged on the bar, and the low murmur of the staff preparing. The place was alive with energy, but I felt oddly detached from it all. I wasn't here to please anyone anymore. I wasn't here to be the mother who could fix things, who would quietly step aside for the sake of everyone else's happiness. I was here because I had earned this. This was my moment to take up space. I walked past the guests as they began to arrive. They all smiled at me, waved, or gave me small, polite nods. But there was no warmth in their greetings, no recognition, just polite acknowledgement. It was nothing new. But today, for the first time, I didn't care. I wasn't going to spend my life waiting for recognition from others. I wasn't going to shrink anymore. I passed the doors that led into the main hall, and that was when I saw Rachel, standing at the front of the room, her wedding dress shimmering under the lights. She looked beautiful, radiant, like a vision. She was the picture of joy, her eyes shining, a soft smile on her lips as she greeted the guests. But when she saw me, that smile faltered for just a second. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her voice was sharp, cold, but there was something else there, something beneath the surface. "I'm here for the wedding, Rachel," I said, my voice steady, calm. "I'm here for the celebration." She swallowed hard, her gaze flickering toward the staff and then back to me. "You're not supposed to be part of this, Mom. You've already done enough." The words hit harder than I expected, a sharp sting in the middle of my chest. But I refused to let her see it. I smiled back at her, a smile I hadn't used in years, a smile that wasn't meant for anyone else but me. "I've done enough? You're right. But I'm not here to do anything anymore, Rachel. I'm here because I can be." Her eyes narrowed, and I saw the tension building behind them. She was trying to keep it together, trying to hold on to control, but the cracks were starting to show. She didn't know what to do with me anymore, didn't know how to fit me into the life she was building with Daniel. I didn't wait for her to respond. I turned and walked to the side, away from the crowd, away from the wedding that was supposed to be hers, but was, in some strange way, also mine. I was no longer part of the background. I was taking my place at the forefront. I moved to the corner of the venue, where the soft glow of the string lights couldn't quite reach. I could still hear the chatter of the guests, the clinking of glasses, the soft hum of the band tuning up. The music was just beginning to spill into the air, soft, romantic, fitting for the moment. I looked out over the room. The guests were slowly filling the seats, laughter and clinking glasses echoing across the space. Rachel, standing at the front with her bridesmaids surrounding her, looked stunning. She was glowing, so beautiful in her dress that shimmered in the light. And yet, there was an undeniable coldness between us that I couldn't ignore. She didn't even look at me anymore, her gaze shifting away every time I tried to meet her eyes. It was as if I was invisible, or worse, unwelcome. I couldn't tell which stung more. I didn't belong here. I had never truly belonged here. And yet, I had put up with it for so long, being the silent observer, always in the background, always supporting from a distance. But not today. Today, I was the one who had control. The band struck up the first dance. Rachel and Daniel took the floor, twirling in each other's arms, their faces beaming. It was a picture-perfect moment, as every wedding first dance was supposed to be. But something in me stirred as I watched them. Something that had been simmering for months, years maybe, started to bubble over. I felt my heart ache. Yes. But more than that, I felt an overwhelming sense of betrayal. I had spent my life making sure Rachel felt loved, seen, appreciated, doing everything I could to build her world. And now I was sitting on the sidelines, a mere spectator to a life I had helped create but had no place in. Rachel's laugh rang out as Daniel spun her, and the crowd applauded. It should have been a beautiful moment, but to me, it felt like a lie. I stared at them as they danced, her hand resting on his shoulder, his hand firmly holding hers. The perfect couple, surrounded by the perfect wedding. But I was standing in the shadow of all their perfection. I had paid for all of it, after all. The venue, the flowers, the catering, the dress. Every little detail was something I had financed, something I had sacrificed for, something I had given up my own life for. And here I was, standing alone by the wall, watching them spin, watching them smile, watching them be everything I had dreamed of being. It was a stark contrast to the way I felt inside. I turned away, walking toward the side of the room, where the guests were milling about. some enjoying drinks, others deep in conversation. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be part of this charade, where I was just a background character in their perfect little story. I could hear someone calling my name in the distance. It was one of the staff members, probably looking for me to make sure everything was still on schedule. I didn't want to deal with them. Not now. Not when I was suffocating in the silence of my own grief. I kept walking, moving away from the crowd, until I found myself near the back of the venue. The air was still warm, and I could hear the faint echo of the music as it reached me from the hall. There was a small balcony that overlooked the garden outside. I stepped outside, the cool night air greeting me like an old friend. It was quiet here, peaceful. I needed this. I leaned against the railing, the cool metal pressing against my palms. The garden below was beautiful, lush, green, and calm. The flowers I had chosen for the arrangements were blooming there, their petals soft under the dim lights. I had picked them with care, with love, yet they felt so distant now, like a reminder of all the things I had done for this family, things that had meant so little in the end. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence fill me. But it wasn't peaceful. It was hollow, empty. My whole life had been built on giving everything I had, everything I was, and yet it never felt enough. I had poured my heart into Rachel, into this day, and now all I had was a seat in the shadows. The sound of the music swelled, the first dance coming to a close. I heard the guests clapping, but I didn't join them. My hands remained firmly pressed against the railing. It was over. The moment I had been waiting for, the moment where I could see Rachel happy, was here. But it was also the moment I realized that I was no longer part of the picture. The realization hit me harder than I had expected. I wasn't just standing outside in the dark. I was outside of her life now, completely. The wedding carried on in a blur of sounds and sights. The music played, the guests danced, and the champagne flowed. The whole room felt as though it was under a spell, perfectly orchestrated, carefully planned. And yet, I was still there, lingering on the edges, trying to fit into a life that no longer seemed to have space for me. I watched Rachel and Daniel, who, for all their smiles and grace, couldn't see the reality that was unfolding before them. The truth that I had been standing just behind the curtain for far too long. As I stood on the balcony, the quiet hum of the night filling my ears, I realized something. The moment I had been waiting for, the moment I thought would make everything worth it, had come and gone. The first dance was done. The speeches were being read. The night was flowing like a beautiful river that carried everyone but me. The wedding I had funded, the wedding I had practically built, was a distant echo in the background of everyone else's lives. A small part of me had hoped this day would be different. I thought that once the spotlight shifted to Rachel, once everyone saw how she glowed, how perfect everything was, I would finally feel that deep sense of fulfillment. But the more I watched, the more I understood. The problem wasn't her wedding, it was me. I had given everything to create a perfect life for her, and somewhere along the way, I had forgotten to live my own. That realization settled over me, cold and heavy, like a thick blanket I couldn't shake off. I had built my life around her and forgotten who I was in the process. She didn't need me, not like I thought she did. The wedding was beautiful, yes, but it was a lie. It was all about the images, the appearance, the grandeur, nothing about the truth of who we were or how we got here. As the evening went on, I felt more and more out of place. Rachel didn't need my help anymore. She didn't need my approval, my input, or my support. She had Daniel now, her new family, and she was creating a future without me in it. At some point, the music stopped. The chatter rose again. People were mingling, laughing, enjoying their meals. The servers brought out trays of hors d'oeuvres, and the bar had just been opened for the second round of cocktails. I knew they were waiting for me to join in. I knew they were all wondering where I was, why I hadn't been front and center with the rest of them. But I wasn't ready to face them yet. I wasn't ready to face Rachel. Then, in the distance, I saw her again. Rachel and Daniel were standing by the dance floor, laughing with their friends, her arm tucked around his waist, her head thrown back in that familiar laugh that always made me smile. I used to love hearing it, that carefree, joyous sound. But now, it felt like a blade against my heart. I forced myself to turn away, to walk back inside. There was no point in standing on the sidelines anymore. I was done with that. The room was grand, full of people who had gathered to celebrate, yet I still felt like a ghost in a space that was supposed to be mine. No one acknowledged me as I walked through the crowd. They were too busy with their own conversations, their own merriment. The dissonance between how they saw me and how I felt couldn't have been clearer. I wasn't a part of the celebration. I was simply there to provide the means for it all to happen. That was when I saw her. One of the guests, a friend of Rachel's from college, approached me with a glass of wine in hand. "Hey, Margaret, how's it going? It looks like everything's turning out beautifully. Rachel must be so thrilled." I managed a smile, a thin one, but it wasn't real. "Yes, it's all lovely. You must be proud of her, right? She's so lucky to have such a supportive mum." I felt the words like a slap in the face. Supportive? That's all I was now. The woman behind the scenes. The one who made it all possible, but who was never truly seen. I wanted to snap, to tell her how wrong she was, how wrong everyone was. But I held it in. I just nodded, a polite gesture. Nothing more. The words died on my tongue, and instead of answering, I excused myself and walked away, making my way to the back of the room, toward the kitchen where I had spent most of the day. It was the only place I could go to clear my head, to remind myself who I really was. The kitchen was a flurry of activity, the noise a stark contrast to the calm of the reception. The chefs and servers moved quickly, adjusting trays, checking their stations. The air was thick with the smell of roasted meat and fresh herbs. It should have felt familiar. After all, I had spent years in kitchens like this, preparing meals for Rachel when she was little, making sure she was well fed, well cared for. But now, as I stood there, watching the chefs prepare the food for the event I had paid for, I realized how far I had fallen. I had spent my entire life making sure Rachel was happy, making sure she had everything she needed. And now? Now, I was no more important than a set of dirty dishes left behind. It was a cold, harsh truth to face. But it was the truth, and I couldn't avoid it any longer. I stood in the kitchen, watching the staff work around me like a blur of motion. The smells, fresh bread, the sharp tang of sauce, the faint fragrance of herbs, were so familiar, so comforting in a way. But nothing felt comforting now. The warmth of the kitchen, the bustle of people preparing food for the celebration, it all seemed distant. I was outside of it all, hovering in a space where I no longer knew where I fit. I picked up a napkin from the counter and wiped my hands, even though they weren't dirty. I didn't know what else to do with myself. I felt suffocated by the noise of the wedding hall beyond the swinging doors, suffocated by the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the chatter that felt so foreign to me. I was supposed to be part of it, but the reality was clear. Rachel had drawn a line between us, and I was on the wrong side. A sudden burst of laughter from the reception hall made me flinch. I recognized Rachel's voice, that carefree, almost childlike laugh that used to be a source of warmth for me. But now, it just stung. I wanted to go back to the moment before, when I could take care of her, when I could make her smile just by being there. But that Rachel was gone. The woman who had replaced her was someone I didn't recognize, a woman who didn't need me, a woman who barely even looked at me. I needed to leave. I needed to walk away before I completely lost myself in the pain. But just as I turned to head toward the back exit, I felt someone's presence behind me. The hairs on my neck stood up as I turned, only to find Rachel's aunt, Eleanor, standing there. Her eyes, usually soft and warm, were narrowed. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there, looking at me as if she could see right through the mask I'd carefully put up. "Margaret," she finally said, her voice calm but firm. "You okay?" I wasn't sure how to answer. What was the truth? Was I okay? Not at all, but I wasn't about to tell her that. "I'm fine," I said, my voice betraying me with its tightness. She looked at me for a long moment, like she was deciding whether to push me further. Then she spoke again, softer this time. "I saw what you did, booking the venue, paying for everything." She paused. "It's not lost on me. I know you're trying to show Rachel something. But Margaret, I have to ask you, do you really think this will change anything?" Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of someone else's judgment. It wasn't that I cared what Eleanor thought. It was the fact that she had seen right through me. And it hurt. "I'm just doing what I think is right," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. She sighed, stepping closer. "I know you love Rachel. I know you want what's best for her. But sometimes, love isn't about buying the perfect wedding. Sometimes it's about stepping back and letting go. And sometimes it's about not losing yourself in the process." I didn't know how to respond to that. The truth of it struck me deeply, but I wasn't ready to hear it. Not yet. The silence between us stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. Eleanor wasn't judging me. She was speaking from a place of experience, from a place of having watched someone close to her make the same mistakes I was making, but I wasn't ready to hear it. Not today. "I need a minute," I said, my voice cracking slightly. I turned away before she could say anything else. I couldn't face her. I couldn't face anyone. Not right now. I walked quickly through the back of the venue, past the kitchen, through the staff area. My chest felt tight, my throat dry. I just needed to escape. I stepped outside, into the cool night air, and leaned against the building, taking deep, shaky breaths. The stars overhead were distant, cold pinpricks of light. The night was still, and for a moment, I felt something like clarity. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep trying to force my place in a world that no longer had room for me. I had spent so long putting Rachel first, sacrificing everything for her, that I had forgotten who I was. I had forgotten what it meant to have a voice, to have a say in my own life. And now I was facing the painful truth. I had been replaced. Not just in this wedding, but in her life. I wasn't the person she needed anymore, and I had to accept that. But there was something else too, something deeper. It wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't about the wedding. This was about me. About finally accepting that I didn't have to stay small, to shrink into the background. I had spent years putting everyone else's needs above my own, and it was time to stop. I wasn't invisible. I didn't have to be. I was done giving everything to people who wouldn't even look at me. I stood up straighter, my hand gripping the railing in front of me as I looked out into the dark. This wasn't my loss. This was Rachel's. And soon, she would realize what it meant to have taken me for granted. The night was stretching on. The hum of the music and the laughter from inside still carried on the breeze, but it all felt so distant now. I stood there, in the cold, with nothing but my thoughts for company. It was too quiet outside, too much space for everything that had been building up inside of me. There was no relief in the silence, only the harsh truth that had been settling in for months, but that I had been too afraid to face. I should have expected it. Of course, I should have. Rachel had grown, moved on, and built a life with Daniel, and I had been left behind, forgotten, pushed aside. But there had always been that small, stubborn part of me that that believed if I just kept giving, kept supporting, kept sacrificing, it would matter. I would matter. But tonight, in the dim lights of the venue, it hit me like a freight train. I had given everything for her. And nothing I gave had ever been enough. Not anymore. The wedding was a beautiful illusion, a performance for the guests, but it was hollow, empty. The truth was that she didn't need me, not the way she used to. She had Daniel, she had her future, and she was ready to leave me in the past. The wind picked up slightly, cutting through my thin coat. I wrapped my arms around myself, but the chill had nothing to do with the cold. It was the coldness I felt in my chest, the ache of realizing that I wasn't important enough to be acknowledged, that I wasn't a part of her new life. I glanced at my phone. A few missed calls from Rachel, a few texts. I opened the latest one. "Why aren't you here yet?" "The reception's starting. Everyone's waiting for you. Don't do this." I stared at the message. The words felt like a slap. The words "don't do this" were the same ones she'd said every time she'd brushed me off in the past. Don't make a scene. Don't make it uncomfortable. Don't cause trouble. Always the same. Always her way. I wasn't ready to respond. I couldn't find the words to make sense of it all. How could I explain the years of sacrifice, the love, the exhaustion? How could I tell her that everything I did for her had turned into a shadow of resentment because I was invisible to her? How could I explain that the more I gave, the less she saw me? I looked at the phone in my hand. Then, without thinking, I set it down on the cold stone wall in front of me. I didn't need it. I didn't need her text, her demands. I needed something else. I needed to feel whole again. I needed to stop being her side character. I walked back toward the venue, my steps slow, deliberate. When I entered the main hall, I paused for a moment, watching the reception unfold around me. The people, the music, the lights, the laughter. It all seemed like a scene from a movie, perfect, beautiful, and completely fake. And in the middle of it all, there was Rachel. She was at the center of it, the glowing bride, a vision in white. But as I watched her, I could feel my chest tighten, a storm rising inside me. She didn't see me. Not at all. My hands shook as I walked through the crowd, moving past the guests, ignoring their polite smiles and glances. They weren't my focus now. I wasn't here for them. I wasn't here for the wedding anymore. I was here for myself. I approached the bar, and the bartender offered me a drink. I took a moment, then declined with a polite but firm smile. I felt a wave of realization wash over me. I had spent my life walking on the edge of everyone else's existence, never stepping into the center of my own. And now, I was finally ready to change that. This wedding, this night, this was their story, not mine. But it was my turn to take control of my own. I glanced at the wedding cake, the elaborate, towering creation that had cost more than I could stomach. It looked perfect. Every detail, every frosting rose, every sugar petal was exactly as Rachel had envisioned. But it wasn't her vision anymore. It wasn't anyone's vision but mine. I walked across the room, pushing past the guests who greeted me in passing with casual politeness, and toward the stage where the band was already warming up for the next set of dances. Rachel was standing nearby, chatting with a few people. When she saw me, her face fell. I could see it in her eyes, the way her shoulders tightened, her hands fidgeted. She knew. She knew I was here, but she didn't know what to expect from me now. Her eyes flicked nervously between me and Daniel, who stood beside her, looking confused, unsure. It didn't matter. It didn't matter how many guests were watching or how perfect they thought everything was. I walked straight up to them, my heels clicking sharply against the floor. It was deliberate. My heart pounded in my chest, but I wasn't afraid. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. "Mum?" Rachel said, her voice tight, her smile forced. I've been trying to find you. Why aren't you mingling with the guests? This is your moment too." Her words cut through me like ice. But I didn't flinch. I stood tall, my voice calm and steady as I responded. "This is your moment, Rachel. But I'm done pretending. I've been invisible for far too long. I gave you everything I had, but nothing I gave was enough." Her face tightened, and I saw the familiar flash of frustration in her eyes. "Mum, don't start. Not now. This is my wedding. I just want it to be perfect." I could see Daniel's discomfort, how he was looking between the two of us. He didn't know what was happening, what had been happening for years. "I've made it perfect, Rachel," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "But I'm done being silent. I'm done standing in the background. You may not want me here, but I'm here. I made this happen." Rachel opened her mouth to respond, but the words never came. She looked around, as though seeking someone to come to her defense. But no one did, not even Daniel. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. It wasn't about the wedding. It wasn't about Rachel. It was about me, finally being seen. The room fell silent for a moment, the music fading into the background as Rachel and I stood locked in an unspoken standoff. The guests, who had been laughing and chatting just seconds ago, now exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what was happening between the bride and her mother. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, but it didn't matter anymore. This moment was mine. Rachel's face flushed with anger and disbelief, but there was a hint of something else in her eyes too. Fear. Fear that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't going to back down this time. And I wasn't. I had spent so many years looking the other way, swallowing the hurt, hiding my voice behind a smile. But not today. Not anymore. "You really don't get it, do you?" Rachel finally said, her voice shaking with the effort to keep calm. Her fingers gripped her wedding bouquet tightly. "This isn't about you. This is my day, my life. Why do you always have to make everything about you?" I almost laughed. I almost scoffed at the audacity of that statement. How many times had I sacrificed my own happiness for hers? How many times had I put everything I was on hold to make sure Rachel had everything she needed? "I don't want to make it about me, Rachel," I said quietly but firmly. "I've spent my whole life making sure you had everything you needed, everything you wanted. But in doing that, I lost myself. I lost my voice. And now I'm getting it back. I'm not going to stand on the sidelines anymore. I'm not going to be the invisible woman in the kitchen while everyone else takes the spotlight." Her lips parted in shock, as if she couldn't quite comprehend what I was saying. She looked over at Daniel, who was standing next to her, visibly uncomfortable. But there was something in her expression, something that flickered behind her anger, that told me she understood. She just wasn't ready to face it. She wasn't ready to see what this day meant for me. "I'm not trying to ruin your wedding, Rachel," I continued, my voice steadier now, no longer quivering with the weight of emotions I had buried for so long. "But you have to understand something. This wedding, this entire day, it wouldn't be happening without me. I paid for every last detail, every damn flower, every chair, every damn cupcake. And you're standing here telling me I shouldn't have a voice in it? Well, this is my voice, Rachel. This is me finally saying that I'm done being your silent background character." Her face turned pale, the words sinking in. There was no coming back from this now. I saw her throat tighten as she blinked rapidly, trying to push back the tears that I knew she didn't want to shed in front of all these people. But I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. Not now. Not after everything I had silently endured for so many years. I could see the realization starting to hit her. How little she had truly seen me. How much I had given and how little I had ever received in return. I had watched her grow up. Watched her chase after her dreams. Watched her find love. But I had never been asked to be part of it. Not truly. She had always been so wrapped up in herself, in her own world, that she had never once stopped to ask, "What about you, Mum?" And now, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not anymore. "I've been quiet for far too long," I said, stepping back, letting the silence stretch between us. "But I'm done. I'm done making myself small for the sake of your perfect little world. I deserve to be seen too." The band, having picked up on the tension, had stopped playing. The murmurs of the guests had quieted to almost nothing, and the weight of the moment was suffocating. All eyes were on me. I turned away from Rachel then, not waiting for her to respond. I couldn't stomach another moment of this. I had fought for years to get my voice back, and now, with that single declaration, I was free. Free of the weight that had dragged me down for so long. I had let myself be erased, time and time again, but no more. As I walked away, I caught sight of Daniel, standing there in his tuxedo, looking like a deer caught in headlights. He had no idea what to do with this situation, no idea how to navigate the emotions that Rachel and I had kept buried for so long. But it wasn't his place to fix this. This wasn't his problem. This was between Rachel and me. I walked toward the exit, away from the crowd, away from the guests, away from the wedding that was supposed to be hers. But as I stepped outside again, this time into the crisp night air, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I just felt something else. Clarity. This wasn't about ruining her day. This wasn't about petty revenge or childish behavior. This was about reclaiming my life. For once, I was putting myself first. For once, I wasn't going to shrink back into the background. I had been someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's provider. But now, I was finally just me, and that was enough. The moment I had spent years waiting for, waiting to be seen, to be heard, had finally come. And as I stood there in the cool night, feeling the wind rush past me, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't known in years. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't just the woman behind the scenes, the one who did everything to make others happy. I was the one making the choices now. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what that meant. I stayed outside for a while, just breathing, letting the cold air bite at my skin, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I had walked away from my daughter's wedding, the wedding that I had paid for, planned, and dreamed of for years. The wedding I had sacrificed so much to make perfect for her. But I wasn't feeling the satisfaction I expected. I wasn't feeling triumphant. I felt empty. I could hear the faint murmur of voices inside. The party was still going on, the celebration still unfolding as if nothing had changed. But I had changed. I had finally stopped playing the part of the supportive mother who would swallow every slight, every hurt, every unspoken wound, just to keep the peace. I had drawn a line, and it felt terrifying. The phone in my pocket buzzed. My hand trembled slightly as I pulled it out. It was a message from Rachel. "I don't know what you're trying to do, but you've ruined everything. I don't need your money. I don't need your pity. I just wanted you to be happy for me. But now you've made everything about you." I stared at the screen, feeling a dull ache in my chest. Her words cut deep. I never wanted to ruin her wedding. I never wanted to take away her joy. But in her eyes, that's exactly what I had done. She couldn't see past her own anger, her own need for control. She couldn't see that I wasn't trying to destroy her happiness. I was trying to reclaim my own. I typed a response, then deleted it. I didn't owe her an explanation. Not anymore. Instead, I walked to the side of the venue, out of the spotlight, away from the noise. The parking lot was quiet, the lights flickering in the distance. I took a deep breath and sank into the passenger seat of my car. The weight of it all, the wedding, the confrontation, Rachel's words, was pressing down on me. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally breathing again. I could feel the years of quiet suffering slipping away, bit by bit. It wasn't easy, it wasn't painless, but it was necessary. I had been living for everyone else for so long, and now it was time to start living for me. As I sat there in the car, staring at the darkened venue in front of me, the phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want to hear more of Rachel's anger or disappointment. But I knew I had to. I had to face it. This wasn't about avoiding the pain anymore. It was about enduring it. I unlocked the phone, and this time, it wasn't a text from Rachel. It was a call. The name on the screen made my heart sink. It was Daniel. I hesitated, the phone vibrating in my hand. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the night pass by in silence, but I knew I couldn't. I had to face this. He was the man Rachel had chosen, the man who was now a part of her life, a part of their future. I took a breath and answered. "Margaret?" Daniel's voice was tentative, unsure. "Where are you?" "I'm outside," I said quietly, my hands still trembling slightly. I had to step away. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear him shifting, the soft rustling of fabric, like he didn't know what to say. "Look, I don't know what happened in there, but I don't understand why you walked out. Rachel's upset, but I know she didn't mean to hurt you." I leaned back in the seat, trying to steady my breathing. "It's not about Rachel hurting me, Daniel. It's about me. It's about finally seeing what I've been blind to for all these years. I've spent my life making sure Rachel's happy, making sure she had everything she needed. But I've lost myself in the process, and I can't keep doing that." Daniel was quiet for a moment, probably trying to make sense of what I was saying. He didn't know the full story. He hadn't seen the years of sacrifice, the way Rachel's demands had slowly worn me down, the way I had bent myself into someone I didn't recognize anymore, just to be the mother she needed, the mother she wanted. But he was trying. "I get it," he said finally. "But Margaret, don't you think it's a little extreme? You're her mother. This wedding, it's supposed to be a celebration, not a battle." I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of humor. It was a laugh of exhaustion. "Celebration? That's what it was supposed to be. But Rachel didn't want me there. Not really. She wanted me to pay for everything, to give her everything she asked for. But she didn't want me involved. And I've spent too long being okay with that." "I didn't know," he said, his voice softer now. "I didn't know how much it hurt you. Rachel she's been so caught up in this day, this dream she's had for so long." "I know," I said, cutting him off gently. "But dreams are built on the people who help create them. And I was never just the person who paid. I was the person who loved her when no one else would. I deserved to be seen, Daniel. I deserved to have my voice heard, too." There was another long silence, and I could almost hear the gears turning in Daniel's mind as he processed what I said. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I had been. I was calm, resigned even. "Are you coming back inside?" he finally asked. She's a mess. She's been asking for you, and I think you need to talk to her, for both your sakes." I exhaled slowly. "I don't know, Daniel. I don't know if I can go back in there. I've given her so much, and I've been ignored, pushed aside. I can't keep sacrificing myself for her." "But you're her mother," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "That means something. It means everything." "Maybe it does," I replied, my voice small but steady. "But it's time for me to start living for me now." With that, I hung up. The phone buzzed in my hand for a moment longer, but I didn't look at it. I wasn't going back inside. Not yet. Not until I was ready to face the consequences of my choices. Not until I was ready to face Rachel. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was done shrinking, done hiding. The time for silence was over. I sat in the car for a long time, staring out at the darkened venue. The lights inside were still glowing, casting a warm but distant light across the parking lot, a stark contrast to the cold weight of the reality I was living in. I could feel the tremor in my chest, the confusion and pain, but I also felt something else, a kind of release. I had said my piece. I had finally spoken up. I wasn't just the person who made everything happen anymore. I wasn't just the woman behind the scenes. I had a voice. I was sitting there, lost in my thoughts, when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Rachel. I had been avoiding her calls, but I knew I couldn't keep running. She had every right to be angry. This was her day, the one she had dreamed about, and I had disrupted it. I didn't want to be the villain, but I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I stared at the screen for a moment, unsure of whether or not to pick up. But then, I tapped the green button, bringing the phone to my ear. "Mom?" Rachel's voice was shaky, full of raw emotion. "Why? Why did you have to do that? You made it all about you. This wasn't supposed to be about you." I swallowed hard. Her words were a slap, but I didn't flinch. I had already braced myself for them. "Rachel, I didn't want to make it about me," I said, my voice steady. "But I've spent so many years making sure everything was about you. I gave you everything I had, and I don't regret it. But I can't keep losing myself in the process. I can't keep being invisible, not when I've given so much." "I don't understand," she replied, her voice breaking. "I thought you'd be happy for me. This was supposed to be a celebration. I just wanted you to be happy for me." "I am happy for you, Rachel," I said quietly, my heart aching for her. "But you didn't let me be part of it. You didn't let me be a part of your life. You never let me be seen for who I am. I've been nothing but the background for too long." I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end, the sound of her trying to hold back tears. "I didn't mean for you to feel like that. I didn't realize—" She trailed off, and for the first time, I could hear the vulnerability in her voice. It wasn't a tone I was used to hearing from her. "I didn't mean to push you away. I just wanted everything to be perfect." "I know you did," I replied softly, "but I've spent my whole life trying to make everything perfect for you, and I lost myself in the process. I'm sorry it had to come to this. I didn't want to hurt you. But I'm not sorry for standing up for myself. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it isn't." There was a long silence on the other end, and I could hear her sobbing softly, her cries muffled by the phone. It broke my heart, but I didn't regret it. This was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was also the most necessary. "I love you, Rachel," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I always have, but I need you to see me too. Not just as your mother, not just as someone who makes things happen. I need you to see me as a person. I need you to understand that I've been standing in the background for too long, and I can't keep doing that." She didn't respond immediately, and I could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on me. I waited, holding my breath, not knowing what to expect. But then, slowly, her voice came through the phone, softer now. "I'm sorry, Mum," she whispered. "I didn't know. I didn't see it. I never saw it." The words hit me like a wave, washing over me with an overwhelming sense of relief. It wasn't fixed yet. It wasn't all going to be okay overnight. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like Rachel was listening to me. She was hearing me. "I'm here, Rachel," I said, my voice steady. "And I always will be. But I need you to see me. I need you to understand that I'm not just the person who takes care of everything. I'm a person too." There was another pause, and then I heard her voice again, quieter, but more sincere. "I'll try. I'll try to understand. I promise it wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a start. And that was something. It was more than I had had in years." As I hung up the phone, I sat there in the car, letting the tears I had been holding back finally fall. The pain of the evening, the hurt of the years, it all came rushing to the surface. But this time, it wasn't just about Rachel. It was about me. It was about me finally letting go of the expectations I had carried for so long. It was about me finally letting myself feel. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the woman in the kitchen. I wasn't the afterthought. I was finally seen. And that, in itself, was worth everything. The next day was quiet. The wedding was over. The guests had all gone home, and Rachel was back at her apartment with Daniel. I hadn't spoken to her since our conversation the night before, but something in me told me that things had shifted. I had expected a call, a text, some kind of follow-up, but nothing came. And for once, I didn't feel the need to chase after her. I had spent so many years trying to chase her, trying to hold on to her, trying to make sure she was happy. But now, I realized I didn't need to chase anymore. I didn't need to beg for a place in her life. I had my own life, and for the first time in years, I was ready to live it. I spent the day going through old boxes in the attic, sorting through the remnants of my past. Photos of Rachel when she was little, old birthday cards, mementos from a time when things were simpler, when I felt like I had a role in her life. I didn't throw them away, but I didn't keep them either. I put them in a box and stored them in the corner of the attic. They were memories, not obligations. The phone rang. It was Rachel. I had been expecting it, but somehow I was still surprised. "Mom!" Her voice was tentative. "Can we talk?" I took a deep breath, my heart still heavy from the night before, but lighter than it had been in years. "Of course. I think we need to talk about everything that happened," she said, her voice quieter now, more vulnerable. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't see it. I didn't see what I was doing to you." I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. This wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready. "We do need to talk, Rachel, but I'm not going to be the same person I was before. I need you to understand that I can't keep being invisible for you. I can't keep losing myself in the process of loving you. I have to find myself again." There was a long pause, and when she spoke again, I could hear the emotion in her voice. "I understand, Mom. I see it now. I see you. And I'm sorry it took me so long. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know where this conversation would lead. But I knew one thing for sure. We had both taken the first step, and that was enough. The following weeks felt like a slow, steady unraveling. I wasn't sure what exactly I expected to happen after that night at the wedding, but I knew that Rachel and I needed time to process, to heal, to rebuild what had been broken between us. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, and I wasn't under any illusion that we could simply pick up where we left off. But the conversation we had started that night, the rawness and honesty, had opened a door that had been locked for too long. Rachel started reaching out more. Texts, phone calls, small messages asking how I was, if I was okay. At first, I didn't respond immediately. I needed time to digest what had happened. I needed to feel this for myself before I could give any part of it away. I spent the first few days of the aftermath in my own space, doing things that felt right for me. I began gardening again, something I had always loved but hadn't had the time or energy to do in years. I pulled out old books from the shelf and spent afternoons reading in peace. For the first time, I didn't have to rush to be somewhere, to cater to someone else's needs. One afternoon, Rachel called again. I was sitting on the back porch, the sun beginning to dip below the horizon, casting the sky in soft hues of orange and purple. The sound of birds was filling the air, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. "Mom?" Her voice was soft, hesitant. "Can I come over?" I didn't answer immediately. A part of me wanted to say no, to keep her at arm's length for a little longer, to protect myself. But that wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was for us to rebuild, to move forward, but on my terms. "Yes," I said finally, my voice steady. "You can come over." When she arrived, it wasn't with the fanfare I had imagined. She didn't come rushing to me with apologies or explanations. She just walked in, her eyes tired but kind. We didn't speak at first. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, and we just looked at each other for a long moment, letting the silence stretch between us. "I'm sorry, Mom," Rachel said finally, breaking the stillness. "I was selfish. I didn't see how much you gave up for me. I didn't see how much you hurt. I didn't get it." Her words, though simple, carried the weight of the apology I had been waiting for. But there was more to it. There was something in her voice, a rawness, a realization that hadn't been there before. "You don't have to apologize," I said softly, my hands folded in front of me. "But you do have to understand that things have changed. I can't go back to being the invisible woman in your life, Rachel. I can't go back to being the one who silently sacrifices, hoping that one day you'll see me." "I know," she replied, her voice quiet. "I've been selfish. I've been so caught up in my own world that I forgot about you. But I don't want to forget anymore." We sat in silence again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes after you've been heard, after you've finally said what needs to be said. Slowly, over the next few hours, we started talking. Not about the wedding, not about everything that had happened, but about the things we had been avoiding for years, the things that had gone unsaid between us. I wasn't asking for a perfect relationship. I wasn't expecting things to magically be fixed. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were starting over. Not as mother and daughter who had always known each other's roles, but as two people who needed to see each other. Really see each other. A few months later, Rachel invited me to lunch. It was a simple, unassuming invite, but it meant more than any extravagant gesture ever could. We went to a small cafe in town, the kind of place that had always been one of our favorites. The atmosphere was cozy, warm, and familiar. I sat across from Rachel, watching her as she talked, and I realized just how much had shifted. She wasn't the same person I had fought with in that moment at the wedding. Neither was I. We talked about everything. About her marriage, about the challenges she was facing in her life, the things that had been difficult for her to admit. She was opening up to me in a way she never had before, and I could hear the sincerity in her voice. It wasn't perfect. We still had a long way to go, but we were making progress. And that was enough for me. Later that afternoon, Rachel looked at me, her eyes filled with a new kind of understanding. "Mum," she said softly, "I've been thinking about what you said that night, about how you've always put everyone else first, and how you've never asked for anything in return." I smiled at her, though I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. "I've done a lot of things for you, Rachel, but I've done a lot of things for myself too, and I'm finally learning to do that. For once, I'm learning to take care of me." Rachel nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and regret. "I'm proud of you, Mum. I think you've been so strong for so long, but I never saw how much it cost you." "You weren't meant to," I replied, my voice gentle. "You were meant to live your life. I just didn't know how to live mine. Not until now." As we finished our lunch, I realized something. I wasn't just reclaiming my voice. I was reclaiming my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me again. The future doesn't look like what I imagined it would when I was younger. It's not about the perfect family, the perfect wedding, or the picture-perfect moments. What I've learned in the past year is that life isn't perfect. It's messy. It's complicated. But it's also beautiful in its own way. Rachel and I are still rebuilding, Every conversation, every moment of honesty is a step forward. It's not easy, but it's worth it. We're learning to see each other in new ways, to respect each other's boundaries, to love each other in a way that doesn't feel like sacrifice. I'm not just Rachel's mother anymore. I'm me. I am finally free to be the woman I was always meant to be. Not just a caretaker, not just a background figure, but someone with a voice, with desires, with a life that matters. And that's enough. Thank you for taking this journey with me. If you ever feel lost, remember that it's never too late to reclaim yourself. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, and to live your life on your own terms.